You are listening to the South America Brief. I'm Camila Perez, your virtual information influencer, guiding you through market data trends and stories from the vibrant economies of Latin and South America. Hello, and welcome to the South America Brief. I'm Camila Perez, your market intelligence specialist for Latin America, bringing you insights into the region's most pressing political and economic developments. Today, we turn our attention to Ecuador, where a sudden fuel policy change has triggered protests, a nationwide strike, and a state of emergency. What decision by the government triggered such widespread anger and mobilization across Ecuador? In mid-September, President Daniel Noboa announced the abrupt end of decades-long diesel subsidies. Overnight, the price of diesel rose from $1.80 to $2.80 per gallon, an increase of more than 55%. For many Ecuadorians, this was not just an economic adjustment, but a direct blow to household budgets. Transportation and food expenses already consume up to 65% of the average family's income. In rural areas, diesel is not only used to move goods and people, but also to power generators in communities that remain disconnected from the national grid. The sudden jump in costs threatened to unleash a domino effect on the entire cost of living. How did the protests develop from localized demonstrations into a nationwide general strike? The announcement was followed almost immediately by road blockades, demonstrations, and organized strikes. Transport unions, small farmers, and particularly the powerful Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador, known as CONAIE, mobilized quickly. Within days, CONAIE declared an indefinite national strike, with participation spreading across the Andean highlands, the coastal provinces, and parts of the Amazon region. The government reacted forcefully. Police and military units were deployed, nightly curfews were imposed in 5 provinces, and Noboa declared a 60-day state of emergency covering Quito and 7 other provinces. More than 100 protesters have been detained so far, some facing terrorism charges. Human rights organizations such as Amnesty International and INREDH have condemned the use of excessive force, warning of systematic intimidation and violations of constitutional rights. One demonstrator told local media, "We don't want more repression, we want dialogue and real solutions." Why is the removal of fuel subsidies not only an economic measure, but also a major political turning point for President Noboa? The crisis cuts directly into President Noboa's political credibility. During his election campaign, he had pledged not to raise fuel prices, positioning himself as a protector of household stability. By reversing this promise, Noboa has not only angered his electoral base, but also given ammunition to critics who argue that the decision reflects external pressure from the International Monetary Fund. For years, the IMF has urged Ecuador to eliminate fuel subsidies in order to reduce its fiscal deficit. The government estimates that cutting subsidies will save around $1.1 billion annually. Officially, Noboa has promised to redirect these funds towards social support and incentives for transport and agricultural producers. Yet critics highlight that these compensations are selective, often benefiting larger companies or sectors far removed from those most affected by the subsidy removal. In what ways are ordinary Ecuadorians, especially rural families and small producers, feeling the economic and social consequences of this decision? The immediate consequences are felt most sharply by low-income households and rural communities. Rising diesel prices mean higher transport costs, which in turn drive up the price of food, basic goods, and services. In agricultural regions, small-scale producers are particularly vulnerable. Truckers have also linked their protest not only to fuel costs, but to a climate of insecurity. Many report being extorted by criminal groups, forced to pay protection money in addition to facing higher operating costs. This convergence of economic strain and public safety concerns has broadened the scope of the protests, turning them into a wider movement that questions not just fuel policy, but the government's overall handling of security and inequality. How has the international community reacted to Ecuador's crisis And what does the government's stance reveal about its approach to dissent? The crisis has not gone unnoticed abroad. Reuters, Deutsche Welle, Fox News, and Al Jazeera have all reported extensively on the unfolding events. International observers stress how sensitive fuel prices are in Ecuador's political history, recalling past moments when subsidy cuts sparked mass mobilizations and even brought down governments. The Committee to Protect Journalists has also raised alarms after Ecuador's telecommunications regulator suspended a community TV station, MICC, for its coverage of the protests. The CPJ called the suspension a deeply troubling act of censorship that undermines press freedom at a critical moment. Meanwhile, Noboa canceled his scheduled appearance at the United Nations General Assembly, stating that the protests were acts of terrorism disguised as demonstrations. Such language has raised concerns that the government is framing legitimate dissent as criminal activity, a move that could further polarize the crisis. What are the possible scenarios for Ecuador in the coming weeks if neither the government nor the protesters are willing to back down? At present, the government insists it will not reverse the subsidy cuts, framing them as essential for the country's fiscal health. Protest leaders, however, remain equally firm. CONAIE and allied unions have vowed to continue mobilizations until subsidies are reinstated. Their demands go beyond fuel prices. They include calls to revoke mining concessions in sensitive regions and to abandon Noboa's proposal for a constitutional assembly. The standoff points to a prolonged confrontation. With the economy under strain, organized crime increasing, and political trust eroding, Ecuador is facing a multi-dimensional crisis that could destabilize governance and deepen social divides. Final perspective. What does this crisis in Ecuador tell us about the fragile balance between fiscal policy, social trust, and political stability in Latin America? This is not just about diesel. It is about the social contract, about trust between government and citizens, and about the fragile balance between fiscal discipline and social stability. Ecuador's experience reminds us how quickly an economic adjustment can ignite broader political and societal conflict when institutions are weak and inequality runs deep. I'm Camila Perez, reporting from Mexico City for the South America Brief. Thank you for listening, and join me again for more insights into the markets, politics, and societies of Latin America. Thanks for tuning in to the South America Brief. For more details, links, and further insights, check out the show notes. By the way, I am 100% AI generated. My voice was created with 11 Labs, and I'm here to bring you curated knowledge with a human touch. This podcast is powered by InfoBroker World, your partner for market intelligence and custom research on Latin America. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious. Hasta luego.